J.M.W. Turner is one of those great English artists. In fact, his work will capture some of the most important issues of the time. So his works once again speak to encroaching industrialization. This idea that, sort of like Rousseau, the rational mind, the rationalism of the Industrial Revolution is somehow damaging or corrupting the human soul. However, unlike other artists, his works are very turbulent in their passion and energy, and in fact, he's going to be laying some of the groundwork for later Impressionist paintings. Impressionism doesn't suddenly pop up in the 1860s. It's something that's been coming down the line, and we'll see it from Turner, and we're going to see it from other artists as well as we move closer to that point. But here we're looking at the slave ship. Now, compared to the massive canvases we've been looking at, this is rather diminutive. But there's a reason for that. Oftentimes, artists will create smaller pieces to draw you in. You need to get close. You feel a need to pay attention to the details. And the details are exactly what you need to pay attention to here. Now, many of you have seen this piece. This is based on the story of a captain who realizes that he would receive insurance only for slaves lost at sea. So he would throw the sick overboard rather than risk them dying aboard. The idea is, if you're sick and you die once we hit port, I don't get any insurance. But if I throw you overboard before that, well, I get the insurance payout for that lost cargo. Remember, slaves are cargo at the time, and this is going to be really important because, of course, 1840, most slavery has been abolished in Western Europe at this point. So this is looking at something that a lot of people are paying attention to, the ideas of slavery, but doing so in a way that it's not personal, because the people that are buying the piece don't own slaves at this point. Again, abolition in Europe. So let's look at the painting. The ship is leaving slaves, or at least their bodies, in its wake. And here we see some details. The scale, again, speaks to the sublime. The scale here, not of the canvas. This isn't a massive canvas, but let me go back one second. Look at the size of the sea and the size of the sky compared to the human parts that we see. Here we see something that appears to be a leg, and it's attached to a body. And we see fish attacking it. Of course, this isn't necessarily what happens. The ocean is not full of bloodthirsty piranha, but increasing that narrative a little bit, well, that's going to help get across the ideas. Throughout the piece, we see these little details. We see hands above the water, bits of cloth, and what appear to be maybe even the shackles themselves, or some other kind of rope or other material that was used to hold the slaves together. But ultimately, what you have is a painting that focuses on a couple of things. First of all, the needless human suffering that's happening. These people are obviously still alive. They're not being thrown overboard already dead, because they wouldn't be, sitting there with their hands above the water if that were the case. So we have the human tragedy there. He uses color here as an emotive characteristic. It's telling us that something horrible is happening. Look at the ship. It's moving into this dark, misty, stormy weather. We have fiery colors being used, yellows and oranges and reds. This is supposed to incite the passions of the person looking at it. You also get a sense of energy. Turner hitting this with the brush rapidly, painting this very, very quickly, getting across a sense of energy, maybe the frantic energy of the slaves trying one last time to save themselves before their invariable demise. Now, interestingly, we see no defined outlines anywhere in the piece. This is foreshadowing Impressionism. And when we look at the piece, it's all about what's happening to the slaves. Now, if he just had the slaves drowning, that would be powerful. And just the waves around them, okay, that's powerful. But the idea of being consumed by massive fish, and in the middle of the 19th century, people do believe they're giant mysterious creatures out in the ocean. But this idea of being consumed alive, here we see a fish that seems to have jumped and eaten something. Here's another massive fish coming in. These are going to get across yet another idea, that idea of consumption, being consumed. It's one thing to imagine yourself drowning. It's another thing to be drowning and being torn limb from limb at the same time. He's trying to create the greatest possible drama so that you can't look at the piece without going, wow, slavery is incredibly wrong. And someone needs to stand up and stop it. Now, again, it's something that's already happened or happening in Europe, in Western Europe at the time. But in the American South, this being 1840, there's another 25 years of slavery to come. That is what Turner is speaking to.